Hi everyone, and welcome back to Lavender Cottage Fibre Arts podcast. My name is Anna and I am coming to you from Naarm or Melbourne in Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm making this video on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin nation and extend my respect to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are watching this video. Normally I make videos with Pia, my sister. I'm actually at her house at the moment. I'm house sitting for her, but she's on holidays at the moment, so I'm just making this video by myself. And this is not going to be one of our normal podcast episodes where we talk about finished objects and whips and future plans. I'm actually making two videos today. So this video is about gift ideas of what to buy for somebody who is a knitter or a crocheter, and the other video is going to be gift ideas for knitters and crocheters to make for other people. So yeah, hopefully I know a lot of people who watch this channel, probably the vast majority of people who watch this channel are knitters and crocheters themselves, but maybe someone might find this video by searching for gift ideas for knitters and crocheters, or maybe it could be useful for you if you are maybe doing a secret Santa with your local knitting or crochet group. Might also give you some ideas of a gift to buy for yourself. And I guess you could also send it to someone as a little bit of a hint. If they said, you know, I don't know what to get for you, can you give me some ideas? You could send them this video. So I think before I get into my suggestions, I will say most of the items that I have like I have sort of sources for them that are based in Australia, because that's obviously where I'm from, but a lot of them, it's not really a specific product that I would recommend. It's a type of product, so you could quite easily find a local source for that type of product yourself. Usually I think Etsy is one of the best places to look, but also if there is a yarn store or yarn shop in your area, that would be another good place to look for these products. And most of them are fairly budget friendly. Again, because I'm in Australia, I'm talking Australian dollars, but I think the vast majority of things in this video would be under about $20 to $25. And I'm going to save the sort of more expensive ones for the very end of the video. But yeah, most of them I think you could get for even under $10. But there's always the option as well that you could purchase a few little things and make sort of like a little gift pack for somebody as well. And I'm actually going to start off with what I would not recommend for you to buy for a knitter or a crocheter for a gift. And it might surprise you, but that's yarn. I wouldn't recommend that you purchase yarn for a knitter or crocheter in your life. And the main reason is because it's so variable. So there's so many different types of fibre. So you have sort of wool and alpaca, mohair, but then also plant-based fibres, cotton, linen, acrylic, and then, you know, for as many different fibre types as there are also different blends of fibres. And then there's also, in addition to that, different weights of yarn. So from very fine sort of lace weight yarn up to quite thick sort of what we call bulky yarns. And I think unless you know someone's tastes in yarn extremely well, I think it's very hard to purchase something for them that they would most definitely be able to get use out of. And it would just be a shame to spend, you know, money on something and the person just doesn't make the sort of types of projects that yarn is a good fit for, because not all yarn can be used to make all different types of projects. So that's the reason that I would say I wouldn't recommend for you to purchase yarn as a gift for somebody. If you did really want to, I would say I think you would have to sort of be happy to relinquish the sort of element of surprise, and I think it would be better to ask someone what you should purchase for them. or you could also purchase a gift voucher for a local yarn shop. But I wouldn't just buy them a skein of yarn. I think the chances are that it's going to be something that they might not use in the type of things that they like to make. So that's what I would not recommend, but I do have lots of things that I would recommend, so don't worry. And like I said, we're going to start with the sort of very budget friendly and then go up to things that are a little bit more expensive. So the first thing is a pair of scissors. So this is something that is an essential item for basically anyone who's working with yarn to have. And you might think, oh, but everyone has scissors in their house. Why would I buy someone scissors as a gift? And so usually people who do knitting and crochet like really small scissors. They're called embroidery scissors, and they are used by people who do embroidery, but they're not specific to embroidery. But we like them because they're really small, so they fit into a notions pouch or notions tin, and you can sort of take them around with you and not have this giant pair of scissors in your knitting or crochet project bag. And the sort of traditional ones that you might have seen at, an older relative's house are usually a stork, the bird, but you can now get really fun ones. So I've seen ones with like sort of flower designs, unicorns, little sheep. I personally have a pair that is the stork, but instead of being in the sort of traditional just brass, they're like this sort of iridescent colour, so you can get really fun ones. And I think I've even seen ones of like a skull, the Eiffel Tower, so many different sort of designs, and they're usually going to be less than about $10. I purchased mine from an Etsy seller called Noodles Crochet, who's based in Australia, but I think if you just look on Etsy for embroidery scissors, you'll definitely be able to find plenty of options. So the next idea I have is some stitch markers, or these are sometimes called progress keepers, and these are sometimes used to clip onto your project if you're trying to track, how much can I make, how much work can I do on this in a certain amount of time, but also they can be used to track. Sometimes in a pattern it will tell you, from this point in the project you need to knit for 20 centimeters or something like that. So you can just clip the little progress marker onto your work, and then knit away, and then go back and measure every so often how far have I gotten from this progress marker. And some people also use them to sort of mark out certain parts of the pattern where they have to do something different. So when I get to this progress marker, I have to do a right leaning increase, and when I get to that progress marker, I do a left leaning increase, for example. So they're very useful, but they can also be quite fun. So you can get very plain ones that are basically just safety pins, but you can also get sort of cute ones that just add a little bit of, extra fun to your project. So some places in Australia where you can buy these that I would recommend are Mavis Handmade. Her website is actually currently closed at the moment, but she will be reopening it at the end of November. So I guess just in time for Christmas. And then two other places in Australia are 1121 Windmills and Tea Time Yarn Retreats. One thing to just be careful of if you do want to purchase some stitch markers is just the type of clasp that they come with. So there's sort of probably maybe 4 different broad types of clasps. One will be the sort of embellishment is attached to one of those safety pin markers, and so those ones can open and close, so they're fine for both knitting and for crochet. There's, I think they're called lobster clasps, which are like the clasps that are used to do up necklaces and bracelets. Again, because they can open and close, they're also fine for knitting or crochet. Lever back, which kind of look like an earring clasp. Again, they open and close, so they're fine for knitting and crochet. But the one that you do want to be careful of is if they're called like a closed ring stitch marker. So they have just like a metal ring with no opening, and then the embellishment is kind of hanging off that ring. Those ones you can only use them for knitting because they slip onto the needles, and then you slip them from one needle to the other. But with crochet, if you were to thread your yarn through one of those closed ring stitch markers, it actually becomes trapped in the fabric, and there's no way of getting it out of the fabric without cutting your yarn. So if your giftee or gift recipient is a crocheter, you really do need to make sure you use a type of stitch marker that can open and close. For knitting, you can use the closed ring stitch markers, although my impression and my personal preference as well is that most people do use some style of clasp that can open and close. Just gives a bit more flexibility of what you can use it for. So there's some options that are based in Australia, but again, if you look on Etsy for knitting progress keeper or crochet progress keeper, I'm sure you'll find many options. And sometimes you can purchase like a set of sort of similar designs that might set you back maybe around $20 to $25, or people who make sort of more intricate ones, maybe selling them individually, and then they might cost probably anywhere from about $10 to $20 for a single progress keeper. But some of those really intricate ones, I think they often use like polymer clay. You can see there's a lot of work that goes into those designs. So yeah, I think that's kind of why they're a little bit more expensive. So the next recommendation I have, this one is a knitting specific one. Crocheters don't use these, but knitters do, and they're called stitch stoppers. And it's basically like a little rubber stopper. It really is a stopper that you insert the needle into, and then it sort of grips onto the needle, and it will stop the stitches from falling off the needle if the project is in a bag, being moved around, being transported somewhere. I used to think that these were kind of not really something that you needed when I was mostly knitting socks, because I knit my socks on a very long needle. So if I wanted to put my project into a bag, I would just pull more of the needle through, so there was heaps of needle kind of dangling out of the project that my stitches were never at risk of falling off the needle. But now that I'm knitting a lot more garments and the stitches are quite sort of bunched up on the cable, it is quite easy for them to slip off the needles if it's just in my bag, or even if it's on a table and then you pick it up and you don't realize half your stitches have come off the needle. So yeah, they're a really convenient thing to have if you're a knitter. They're not very expensive. Usually you can get a pair of them for around $5 or $6, and they come in so many different designs. Basically, if you can think of a character or an animal or a flower or something, there's probably some stitch stoppers that someone has made. So yeah, I've seen like flowers, butterflies, I don't know, Pac-Man, cups of coffee, Hello Kitty, anything. So heaps of different options for stitch stoppers. And some places in Australia that I like to purchase them from are Rainbows and Sprinkles. So she is a West Australian based yarn dyer, but she also has a few little extra bits and pieces. Sorry, just grab a sip of tea. And also Tea Time Yarn Retreats, which is an online shop that sells sort of knitting and crochet bits and pieces. She has some really nice stitch stoppers as well. So a couple more sort of budget-friendly recommendations. The next one is some labels to sew into finished items. And so these are, you could, and I think you would have to spend a little bit more money and probably purchase more to make it worthwhile, get some customized ones. There are people on Etsy who make custom garment labels, so you could get some labels made that say handmade by so-and-so, but you can also get sort of more generic ones, and some of them are quite practical, like they will just have knitted by so-and-so and maybe the care instructions, but some of them are quite funny as well, so that they'll say things like made with blood, sweat and swear words, or I think I was looking at some earlier today that said knitted for a cutie pie or something like that. Like you can get some sort of really nice, sort of funny and cute ones as well. And so I have 3 recommendations of places to get these. One is based in Australia and the other 2 are international. But I think the good thing about these is because they're so flat, even if you do have to purchase them from somewhere overseas, I think the postage would usually be as a letter, and it wouldn't have to be as a parcel. So the postage would be pretty cheap. And I think usually you can buy packs of, even only half a dozen if you just, wanted to purchase a small quantity. And some places that make sort of many different styles, you can also get like a mixed pack of different labels as well. So the first one is called Henry Design Studio AU, and the labels that they make are leather, and then they're embossed with handmade by, or some of them have like a sort of a symbol, like I think I saw some that said like handmade with love or something like that, and then it had a picture of a yarn ball, for example. And they had the leather is available in a few different colors as well. The next one is called the Cozy Club Handmade, and they have labels for sort of knitting and crochet, but also sewing as well. So, and I think they definitely do have the option to purchase like a variety pack of labels that all have a bunch of different options. And they, in particular, a lot of their labels were sort of quite funny as well. So if your gift recipient has a good sense of humour and likes a bit of a joke, you might find something on there that they would really like. And then the last one was called Knit Folk Co. And they also did have some sort of funny ones, but then also ones that may be a bit more practical as well, particularly with sort of care advice for how to care for a hand knit garment. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the Knit Folk Co. also did have labels that said crochet, that referred specifically to crochet as well, not just for knitting. So that could be a good option, and yeah, an option maybe for someone who has a bit more of a sense of humour. So I have 3 more recommendations. So the next one is, I guess, speaking of care, instructions for garments. You could purchase a fancy wool wash for someone. So usually the very last stage of making something, particularly if it is made out of wool, is a step called blocking, and this is where you soak the garment and it relaxes the stitches and kind of sets them. And we usually use some wool wash with that, which is like a detergent, but often it will contain ingredients that kind of condition the fibre as well. Like a lot of them have lanolin in them. And these sort of, you can buy sort of cheaper ones at the supermarket, but I kind of view, like, if you gift someone a really fancy wool wash, it's almost like giving a perfume to a knitter, because a lot of these nice wool washes come in various different fragrances, and I personally do have, I think I have 3 different scents of wool wash, and I just use whichever one I kind of am feeling like at the moment, but it's just like a little touch of luxury kind of thing, but they're not very expensive. You could sort of purchase some wool wash, I think some sort of fancy wool wash for maybe around $20. And the 2 brands, so these are just sort of commercially available, so I'll just give you the names of the brands, and I would recommend that you just look up online where you could source these local to you. So Eucalan is one, and Soak is the other, and they both make a sort of variety of different scents, and I think they both also have an unscented option if your gift recipient is sort of sensitive to fragrances that still have those ingredients that condition the wool and make it really soft, but they don't have the added fragrance if that was something that was not appropriate for your gift recipient. And then speaking of, I guess, lanolin and things that condition wool, my second last recommendation is a hand balm. So often when working with fibre for sort of extended amounts of time, it can cause the skin on your hands to become quite dry, but the problem with using a sort of standard hand cream is that your hands can feel quite greasy for a while, and you then kind of can't pick your project back up and work with it because you don't want the residue from the hand cream to get on your project. There are actually sort of specific hand balms for knitters or crocheters as well. Basically anyone working with wool that contain, similar to the wool wash, contain ingredients that are sort of naturally condition the wool, and lanolin being the main one, which is actually the sort of oil that is produced by sheep that sort of naturally conditions the wool when it's on their body, and it also is good for like yarn. So Tuft Woolens, is the name of the main knitter's hand balm that I'm aware of, that's sort of produced commercially. So again, I would recommend that you investigate where you could source that local to you, or you could also look, a lot of yarn shops, local yarn shops might have a sort of one that's made by someone locally to them for that shop. And that's another one that, that will set you back, I think, maybe again around the sort of $15 to $20 mark. So my last recommendation in this sort of budget-friendly category, under the sort of about $20 to $25 mark, is maybe one that's a bit easier to sort of would be a bit easier for someone who is a knitter or a crocheter themselves, and maybe a little bit more challenging if you were sort of not part of the knitting or crochet community yourself, but I think it would still be possible, and that is actually to gift someone a knitting or a crochet pattern that they wanted. So if you're not familiar with it, Ravelry is a website that is used by many knitters and crocheters to sort of organize their projects. So you can, favorite patterns. You can have a queue of patterns, which is kind of like a list of things that you want to make. You can have a library of patterns, which is a list of kind of all the patterns that you own. But you can also purchase patterns directly through the website, and you can also purchase them as a gift for somebody else. So if you yourself have a Ravelry account, you can add someone as a friend, and then you can actually see their list of favorited patterns and the list of patterns that they kind of want to make. So you could choose a pattern from that list, and then just sort of cross-reference it with their library to make sure they don't already own it, and then purchase it for them as a gift. It might require a little bit of social engineering. I personally on my favorites list have about 3,000 patterns, and I'm obviously never going to make all of them. For someone, if they wanted to get me a knitting pattern, it probably would be a good idea for them to maybe ask me some questions of like, my Juliet Pierre's dog just got up and gave a little bit of a wiggle. She might be joining me on the couch. I think she's thinking about it. You could, say, that's a really nice jumper that you're making. What's next? What would be your dream knitting project or something like that. You could maybe ask someone a few questions to try and figure out a pattern that they would like to receive. Or the other thing you could do, and I've done this for people if I wanted to get them like a gift voucher for somewhere that didn't have gift vouchers. I just made my own gift voucher in like PowerPoint or Canva, and then I put it in a card for them. So I think you could make your own gift voucher. Do you want a gift voucher, Juliet, for Ravelry? No, you want a gift voucher for some chicken probably. But you could just like make your own gift voucher that said, I will purchase you a pattern of your choice from Ravelry. And I think, for me, this speaks to the fact that I think like gifting is not about spending a lot of money on a person. It's about being thoughtful and thinking about something that they would really like. And I think gifting someone a knitting or a crochet pattern is a perfect example of that it's something that it doesn't cost a lot of money. Most sort of knitting and crochet patterns cost maybe between $5 to $15 US, or sort of maybe around 8 to 20 Australian dollars. But it would be really appreciated by someone, especially I think if you're not a knitter yourself and you went and bought someone a knitting pattern. I just think that they would feel that was just such a thoughtful thing to do. So I think that I think that idea very much exemplifies my sort of philosophy about gifting, that it's nothing to do with the cost of the gift, and it's all about just thinking about the person and trying to think of something that they would really, really enjoy. So having said that, I do now though have a few recommendations that would cost a little bit more money, but I just wanted to go through the more sort of budget friendly options first. Yeah, I'm still patting you, Juliet. I haven't stopped. So this is sort of what I would call the sort of mid-tier, that's maybe a little bit more than the sort of $20 mark, but coming in under, I would say, the sort of $100 mark, and most of them would be sort of well under that. So the first one would be some, if they are the type of person that likes to wear jewelry, some yarn themed jewelry. And two that I know, two sort of examples that I've seen, and I can, I'll put in the description box. Again, these are Australian-based companies, but you could again search for something local to you. Some earrings that have like a yarn ball sort of design. And one of them is from a brand called Wilder, and I think their ones were 16 Australian dollars, so that would actually even fit in the budget friendly category. And then the other example was again from 11T1 Windmills. So her earrings are sort of like a laser cut acrylic of a hank of yarn. So yeah, those are two recommendations that I have for some yarn themed jewelry. My next recommendation, this one will be a little bit more expensive. I think you're probably looking to spend, depending on the size of it, maybe around $50 to even up to about $100 on something like this, would be a project bag. So these are bags that are used by knitters and crocheters to sort of transport their project around if they're sort of going out and about with them. And I guess with this, you probably just want to think about the type of things that your giftee likes to make. So if they like to make small things like socks or crochet sort of amigurumi, that type of thing, then a small project bag is fine for those. But if they're making things like garments or blankets, then you probably want to be looking for a large size project bag. And often people who sell project bags will say, you know, this bag can fit, you know, 6 skeins of yarn, perfect for a sweater project, for example. Two examples that I have had my eye on some of their project bags that are based in Australia are Patil Knits and a knitter's suitcase. And Danny actually has a podcast here on YouTube, and she is based on Etsy, and I think Patil Knits has her own website. So there are two options, but again, if you're not based in Australia, you can always just look on Etsy for knitting project bag or crochet project bag, and I'm sure you'll find many options. This next option is a little bit more left field. So if your gift recipient likes knitting, particularly knitting small projects, and they also like walking, you could purchase them actually a chalk bag that's used by rock climbers, because these bags are usually a really good size for a single skein of yarn, and they often have a belt so they clip around your waist, and that allows people to knit whilst walking. So yeah, it's just like a bit of a out of the blue kind of suggestion. I have one from a brand called Cotopaxi, and I can put a picture of the one that I have, but again, yeah, I'm sure that there's many different brands that make these type of things, and that would be something to just look at your local kind of outdoor supply shop, I think, to see if they had a rock climbing chalk bag. So the last thing I have the last suggestion I have, in this kind of like mid-range price category is some business cards. Now this seems like a bit of a weird suggestion, but if the person that you are thinking of gifting to actually makes a lot of stuff either to sell or as gifts for other people, you could use a service like Canva or Vistaprint, just somewhere that makes sort of like custom made stationery, to get some business cards made from them that have on one side something to the effect of, handmade with love by so and so, and then on the back have information about the product. And I actually have made some of these for myself. So now when I give a gift to someone that's from something that I've made, the front just says, that it was handmade by me. And then on the back I have basically fiber, and then like a sort of a line that I can handwrite in myself what the type of fiber that I've used, and then I have another underneath that says care instructions, so that when I give someone a gift, I can give them that information that this is what this item is made from, and here's how to look after it. And I guess the price of how much that would set you back is obviously going to depend on the volume that you order, but it's a suggestion, particularly I think for someone who makes a lot of stuff for other people, whether that's as gifts or as like a commercial enterprise, that might be something that they find quite useful. So now I just have, I don't know if you can see Julie, she's still lying on my lap. This last category is, and I just have 2 recommendations in this. This is what I would call kind of like a splurge category. Like you will be spending upwards of $100, I think, for most types of things in this category. So the first one is something called a yarn swift and ball winder. So if your gift recipient knits or crochets from balls of yarn like this, they would not need something, a yarn swift and ball winder. But if they knit from, if they use yarn that comes in a form that looks like this is called a skein of yarn. You can't knit from this straight away. It will get incredibly tangled, so you have to make it into a ball of yarn. You can do it by hand, but it's quite time consuming. So for me, it takes me about, I think, 30 or 40 minutes to wind 100 grams of yarn into a ball, whereas using a swift and a ball winder maybe takes me 4 or 5 minutes. So the swift is basically this, it almost looks like a sort of like a rotating clothesline that you put the yarn on, and then the ball winder, you basically turn this crank and it feeds the yarn off the swift and then rotates around to wind it into a ball that you can then knit from. There's 2 different types of swifts. So one is called an umbrella swift, which sort of clips onto a table and then sort of opens out literally like an umbrella. So when it's not in use, it's kind of like long and skinny. But it does need a sort of a table of probably about that thickness to clip onto. But it can be sort of made narrow to store. And the other type is called an armish swift, or some people call it a table swift. So this sits flat on a table, but it doesn't pack up any smaller than kind of the size that it is. So I guess if you were to purchase a swift for someone, you might just want to consider how much space they have and where they would be able to store it. But I think that would be a really cool gift for someone who was getting into knitting or crochet, particularly if they were starting to use a lot of hand-dyed yarn and they were sort of maybe grumbling a little bit about how long it takes to wind the yarn into balls. I personally purchased my yarn swift and ball winder from KnitPro, which is a US-based website, but they do ship internationally. And I think they usually have a pretty good sale on during Black Friday, but I was just looking now. At the moment, the yarn swift that I purchased is 101 Australian dollars, but they actually have a bundle deal that you can purchase a swift and the ball winder as a bundle for the same price as just the swift itself. So again, about $100 for a swift, and to purchase a ball winder on its own, there's sort of various different ones, and sort of the least expensive is probably going to be about $40, all the way up to I think about $150 for a ball winder. So again, these are sort of more expensive options if you have a more expensive budget. And then my last idea for a sort of a more expensive gift is a knitting needle or crochet hook set. So if your sort of giftee has sort of gotten into knitting and maybe purchased a couple of needles and now they're doing a lot more, they probably would be looking at some point to purchase a set of knitting needles for themselves, or a set of crochet hooks, and these will again set you back usually somewhere in the area of $100 to $200 depending on the brand and the material, and I think this would be a really thoughtful gift for someone, but I think this is probably one where again you kind of need to relinquish the idea of surprising someone. I think that I wouldn't personally gift someone a knitting needle or a crochet hook set unless I was 100% certain that it was the set that they wanted, because again, similar to yarn, knitting needles and crochet hooks come in different materials. So you can get wooden ones, metal ones, bamboo, and then also the needle size. So some sets will have really small needles for people who do really fine knitting, and other sets will be geared towards the more sort of bigger needles for more chunkier yarns. And so it just really depends on the personal preferences of the individual, what kind of set is going to suit them. So again, I think that is the type of thing that if I did want to gift someone something like that and I didn't know, like they hadn't mentioned it or they didn't have, I don't know, a wish list or something, I think I would be sort of custom making my own gift voucher, and saying that I will purchase them a knitting needle or crochet hook set of their choice, but I probably wouldn't, I think though that one, again, you maybe have to let go of the idea of having something wrapped up under the tree on Christmas Day. But I mean, hopefully as well, presumably most of the people watching this video, if you were buying a gift for someone, they're probably an adult. I think they'll be okay if there's nothing under the tree for them to unwrap. And I think they would just be happy that someone is so thoughtful and wants to buy something really nice like that for them. So I don't personally think that would be a problem, but that would again be something that I probably wouldn't recommend you to purchase unless you are very, very confident that it was the specific version of this sort of type of item that your loved one would like. I think that wraps up my recommendations. So I'm going to have a quick cup of tea and then I'm going to make the other video that I said I was going to make. So the other way around, gifts for knitters and crocheters to make for other people. But I do hope that maybe some of these recommendations have been helpful to you. If you think that there's something that I've missed that should be on this list, please do let me know in the comments below. If you did like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Like I said, feel free to share it, even as like a bit of a hint to someone, hint, if you want to get me something for Christmas, here's something that you could think about. Just thank you very much for watching. If you like this video or you'd like to see some of the projects that me and my sister are actually working on, then make sure to subscribe, because we will have a normal podcast episode coming out soon, hopefully. But otherwise, thank you for watching today, and until next time, I wish you happy stitching, or I should say in this case, happy gifting. Bye.